For years, German tank commanders believed they understood every weakness of the American Sherman tank. They mocked its thin armor, scoffed at its smaller gun, and confidently claimed that a Panther or Tiger could destroy it before the Americans even realized what hit them. But there was one thing, one hidden advantage they never knew, something invisible, something silent, something buried deep inside the steel heart of the Sherman that turned it into a weapon far more dangerous than any German commander ever imagined. What secret technology allowed American tanks to coordinate attacks with impossible speed? How did Sherman seem to move like they were reading each other's minds? And on August 12, 1944, the rolling fields of northern France trembled beneath the thunder of tank engines. Dust swirled across the horizon as columns of American Sherman tanks pushed forward, their silhouettes rising from the wheat like steel giants advancing toward destiny. The air smelled of diesel, cordite, and distant fire, the familiar scent of a battlefield that had devoured thousands of men and machines. The Germans were retreating, but not broken. Hidden among the shattered hedgerows and burnt-out farmhouses were the deadliest predators of the war, the Panzer IVs, Panthers, and a few dreaded Tiger tanks left behind to slow the Allied advance. For years, German commanders believed these tanks were superior in every way. Heavier armor, stronger guns, better optics. They believed numbers and engineering alone would guarantee victory. But what they didn't know, what they never suspected, was that the Americans had a secret weapon hidden inside every Sherman, the world's most advanced battlefield communication system. Inside one of the Shermans rode Lieutenant Jack Mercer, a young tank commander, barely 23, with dust smeared across his face and eyes that had already seen too much loss. Jack knew the German tanks outgunned him. He knew that a Panther could destroy a Sherman from over a mile away. But he also knew something the Germans did not, something that made his crew deadly even when the odds were stacked against them. The SCR 508 radio sat behind him, humming quietly, ready to link him instantly to the dozens of other Shermans rolling across the countryside. To the Germans, radios were luxuries. To the Americans, radios were their strongest weapon. As Jack's platoon moved closer to the village of Saint-Remy, tension.
The first Panther broke through the tree line, its massive cannon glowing in the sunlight. The Germans expected confusion, chaos, panic. But what they saw instead was precision. The Sherman platoon didn't scatter. They didn't freeze. They didn't fire blindly. They moved with coordinated purpose, reacting not to what they saw, but to what they already knew. Jack's gunner fired first, aiming at the Panther's side armor, one of the few vulnerable spots. The shell hit with a thunderous crack. Flames burst from the engine compartment. Smoke poured into the sky. A second Sherman finished it off moments later, firing a shot that pierced the turret ring. The Germans panicked. This wasn't normal Sherman behavior. No American tank group had ever responded this quickly, this intelligently, this perfectly synchronized. German commanders shouted orders from their hatches, waving flags or banging on their hulls. It was chaos. They were blind. They were guessing. But the Shermans knew everything. Jack received another transmission. 2 more Panthers moving to flank. Coordinates transmitting now. The information reached him before the Panthers even cleared the hedgerow. He immediately repositioned, pulling his tank into a low ditch where the enemy wouldn't expect him. Seconds later, the German tanks emerged, turning their turrets in confusion. How were the Americans already repositioned? How had they predicted the flank?
The battlefield of Saint-Remy lay beneath a choking blanket of smoke as the afternoon sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the world in harsh streaks of gold and red. The scent of burning oil hung in the air, thick and heavy, clinging to every breath Lieutenant Jack Mercer took inside his cramped Sherman turret. His headset crackled again, not with fear, not with panic, but with the calm, steady voices of other American tank commanders who were alive because of one thing: the radio network that bound them all like a single organism. The hum of the SCR 508 radio behind him felt almost alive, as though the machine itself understood the role it played. Its soft static was the pulse of the American armored force, a sound that meant coordination, survival, and victory. Outside, the last flames from the destroyed Panthers flickered upward, sending twisting plumes of black smoke into the darkening sky. But Jack knew the battle was not over. He felt it deep in his bones. The Germans would not accept defeat so easily. And he was right. Beyond the ridge, hidden behind a line of shattered stone walls, a fresh German armored unit was maneuvering into position. These weren't inexperienced crews or desperate stragglers. They were veterans, men who had survived years on the eastern and western fronts, men who had watched lesser tanks crumble beneath the claws of tigers and panthers. They believed in their machines. They believed they were superior. And most dangerously, they believed the Americans were weak. But they hadn't witnessed the invisible power that moved through the Sherman's radio wires. They had no idea that every tank in Jack's formation was already receiving reports from scouts, aircraft controllers, and other divisions miles away. The Shermans knew the Germans were coming before they even crested the ridge. Jack's heart pounded as new instructions flowed through his headphones. He swung his turret and scanned the hills. Faint silhouettes appeared through the haze, dark, armored shapes advancing with deadly intention. A German Tiger tank, its massive turret turning like the head of a metal predator, led the formation. Behind it,
without hesitation, without confusion, without wasted seconds, the Shermans acted. They rolled forward from behind a hedgerow, guns already elevated. They fired in perfect succession, their rounds slamming into the Tiger's weaker side armor. The first shell stunned it. The second dented the plating. The third penetrated, erupting in sparks and smoke. The massive machine shuddered, its turret ceasing rotation. Fire poured from the engine compartment like a living thing. The Tiger crew tried to escape, but a final shot from Jack ended the struggle. The steel monster that once ruled the battlefield now lay burning, defeated not by brute force, but by communication. The German unit froze. Their confidence faltered. They did not understand how the Americans reacted so quickly, how they predicted the Tiger's movement, how they struck with such deadly precision. They didn't know that every Sherman was receiving updates not just from Jack's platoon, but from artillery observers perched miles away, from reconnaissance units tracking movement behind the hills, and from other American tank groups coordinating across the entire front line. To the Germans, the Shermans appeared to react instantly, almost as if they possessed a hive mind. Panic rippled through their ranks, and in that moment of hesitation, the Americans struck again. Jack's voice filled the airwaves. He directed the shell ripped through the Panzer's front armor, exploding inside the turret. Flames burst outward. The German crew never stood a chance. The remaining German tanks, witnessing this impossible anticipation, began to retreat. To them, it was as if the Americans could see through the hills, predict movements before they happened, and coordinate with impossible precision. Some German survivors later wrote in their reports that the Americans fought as if guided by an unseen intelligence. They believed the Americans were using aircraft. They believed there were spies. They believed anything except the real truth. The truth was simple, but devastating. It was the radios. Radios the Germans underestimated. Radios that let American tanks think, move, and strike as one.